Well, I just want to thank you all for the incredible presentations, and we're just probably going to be able to get through a few questions. We're going to go ahead and take this panel down to about 20 minutes. But one of the first questions I wanted to ask was, for those community members who are working in partnership with these incredible researchers, what is some advice that you would give to other researchers about working in tribal communities? What are some of the considerations that they should be thinking about? What are some of the partnership goals that they should have? What suggestions would you give to academic researchers who want to come in and work in tribal communities? So any community partner is welcome to answer that one.
Well, first off, for us, bringing on the board in the beginning would have been good. Partnerships, just growing your relationship with the community.
I could jump in here and say I was taught early on by the governing board that your first job is to listen to the concerns and to understand where people are coming from.
Yeah. It'll just start working once you start talking. Is his microphone on?
Hello.
There we go. Sound good.
Well, a lot of times you got to respect, the people you're working with, and their privacy and what they want to tell us is different from what we think, maybe. Well, I'm kind of forward. I come and tell them, well, why don't we do it? But you got to respect the people that you're working with, and their privacy was a big part of it. And after that, you get in good relationships with everybody, and everything seems to work out well.
Well, similar question then perhaps for you, Vanessa, is that, you're from Montana, this is your communities that you're working in. What are some of the both struggles and great strengths of working in the community from which you come from? And I know that there are some of the struggles that happen on the university side and respecting what needs to go on the tribal side. What were some of the challenges and perhaps how you overcame those, and just again, some of the strengths of being able to work in your own state and your own community?
So I think it was really an honor for me to be able to go back to Montana. When I found a job at Montana, I was able to go back and be closer so I could do the work at Crow. And so already having those relationships, so I'm related to the tribal college president, so I could get in there and talk to him. But then again, I'm related to him, so I have responsibilities. And sometimes I feel like they expect a lot from me too. I have a lot of expectations from my community as well as from the universities that sometimes are hard to balance. I can't do anything wrong as a researcher there because I want to go back there. I got to show my face there at powwows and family events. So I always have to keep that at the forefront of my mind. But it's also been good when I've had issues with kind of personnel things or things I need to get running for my grant. It's been good that I already have this relationship with people in the community. They already know who I am, so it was a little bit easier to get in there and kind of smooth things out. But so I think it's just this kind of I feel like there's a lot of there's some benefits because people know me, but there's also those things of thinking about people know who I am, people know my family. I'll get in trouble if I do anything wrong.
So Trina, perhaps if you want to answer that one also.
Yeah, the difficulty I found is, a university and the way it runs is a system, and it just doesn't jive with the way things run at the community side of things. So there's a lot of discussion required, especially when there's a new relationship that takes a long time. But when you have established relationships, you can, those work well as well. But it's just difficult because what I'm finding is that research doesn't always fund what communities want. And I'm speaking more from our diabetes prevention project on this component, is that research funds research activities. It doesn't fund intervention activities, and that's what communities see and that's what communities value. So you often need to find additional funds to do that. So, and again, how those funds get to the community, like if the research is happening in the community, why aren't the funds in the community. So that's another challenge. It's not always easy to figure out the best way to do that. And again, I have to just echo what you were saying, Vanessa, is that, when you present yourself and identify yourself as, from a certain nation, you're carrying the responsibility that what you do is going to reflect back on your community. So that's a lot to carry. And I guess the third thing is I'm learning how to, I can't be in every community doing the research. I have graduate students now who I'm training to do that, and it's so difficult to let them go, and because I'm thinking, what are they going to do if I'm not there? I feel incredibly responsible for that as well.
Thank you so much. And another question would be around the, you guys did talk about in the partnership in Wyoming that there was issues that arose, particularly around the forming of the Community Advisory Board. Can you tell us a little bit more about that, how that conflict came up, and then how you overcame that to have such a strong partnership now, so then both perspective of the community, then also the university?
Well, for one, it is because we had 2 non-natives on the board in the beginning, and then it was just the struggle of knowing what the program or the project was about, and then we just kept fighting our way, and it felt like going to a meeting and getting paid, and getting a document and reading a document and a report. And that's how it was in the beginning. And it was just like every meeting going, getting paid, and getting another document. So.
Yeah, it was a little bit different. Like when I first started going, and before I knew I was even sitting on a committee, I was asked to come to the meeting, so I did. I hit every meeting, and the committee should have been started earlier, but it just kind of walked into it slowly. And pretty soon we had a little committee, and it started forming a little bit better. And we started asking questions about certain things that was going on that we should know, or we should have a say into. And everything just started coming together, and then we got formed, and now we're kind of a force to be reckoned with now on the cab, and we found out that we have a say, and we should say something about what our people need and what they want in the gardening project. But it's doing better now, and we've got 1 more year of getting families in for gardens, and we're already working on it to get it fulfilled.
I've been on the board now for 3 years, and I know that when I came on, that was the main thing, was that the board was not informed of what was going on in the community, or what the project was doing. And I would say, well, why are we not involved in that process? And it changed. Or there would be a letter sent out, and we would be saying, the letter would be saying that the board supported this action. And we were like, no, we didn't know anything about that. So we would ask to be involved in whatever correspondence. There was even articles presented about the project, and we would go in and edit it and put our 2 cents in, so that it was representing us as our board. We weren't a token. We were being represented of our community.
Yeah, I think we started out, and Christine and I, as we were envisioning some of the project, I think one of the traditional ways or typical ways of looking at community advisory boards is to just have a group there that you can bounce ideas off of, that can oversee the work, and there's a really narrow vision of what a community advisory board can do. And the reality is that many of these grants, I think one of the things I hear a lot about research is that there's a failure of thinking about sustainability beyond the life of the project. How do you carry that forward? And so that's over time, that's what the board told us was important to them, is that they wanted to have their own budget, to meet more often, and to build the capacity to be an entity of themselves, that they can take this work and be the group that's carrying that forward beyond the life of the research project. And so we had to, it took some time because, we had this narrow vision, and we had to, they just kept pushing and saying, no, you still don't get it. Listen again, here's what we're saying. And then finally it seems like that came around and we were able to hear that and revamp our budget to give a lot more to the advisory board, to allow for more paid meetings, and to give them a budget to be able to do a demonstration garden, so that even after we're not doing more gardening support through this project, there are demonstration gardens that the community can come and visit and hopefully carry that into the future.
Thank you so much, because that is one of the things in of course, the life of my professional research career, I've worked on 28 projects across 14 institutes of the National Institutes of Health, and every single one of them had an issue like this. And sometimes it worked out really well, which I'm so happy it did, because there's so many positive things. But sometimes we struggled, and they don't always go so well. So thank you for sharing your lessons, because that's how true collaboration builds, is taking conflict and finding the best ways to work through. So thank you so much for sharing that. It's such an important perspective. We actually are going to go to I feel like a talk show host. We're going to go to a question from the audience. And I think I've been able to pop it up here. We'll see. Did it go up? I don't see. Oh, yes, there we go. So, and I think this is really important. Now I'm no longer at a university, although I worked at universities for a really long time. I direct a tribal research organization that is a nonprofit directed by our urban Indian tribal community. And so I'm not in the universities anymore. And it is a really important thing to think about: how do academic institutions support tribally led research projects? Because I have seen in the audience right now some of the most incredible Native researchers who are working in their own tribal communities, who may not have the same access to resources that were once they may have had the universities or universities hold. So how is your academic institution, for those of you working at universities, supporting tribally led research projects, assisting in building tribal capacity to do their own research projects within their communities?
You want me to start? Well, I'm fortunate that I'm in a research center, like we talked about, that supports this kind of work and has actually transformed, started to transform the system a bit to understand that, communities need to be directing the research that happens with them and about their issues. At McGill University, because of Truth and Reconciliation, universities now are coming up with plans for how they're going to do things differently to address the fact that we need to do research that supports the self-determination of communities. So our institution has put out a task force report on how to improve these relationships, and there's about 4 actions that are particularly related to research. And having Indigenous knowledge, having spaces in the university to do that. So how do we bring in Indigenous scholars to provide that knowledge that doesn't really exist in the institution, and how do we create those spaces there? So there's a lot of actions that have been identified, and I think we're just really at the very beginning of seeing how we can put those things into action. I just want to mention that there has been in Canada, there was a big opportunity to put in a proposal to start network environments for Indigenous health research. So these would be creating networks that would focus on building community capacity for research. And so that's a funding structure in Canada that supports doing this kind of work, that's building community capacity. And I was the PI who put in for our grant, because I had a lot of support and people saying that I should be the one leading that, even though I had other ideas about it. But my institution has given a lot of support. If we do get that funding to start that network, the university has also committed pretty much the equivalent to what they would get for the indirect funding back to the project.
University of Wyoming is doing a number of things, I think, to try to start moving in that direction. We've had really bad relationships, actually, with the Wind River Reservation in the past in terms of research and getting a tribal college. Tribal college was accredited by some Oshkosh, not even the University of Wyoming, which seemed crazy. So I think they're trying to make some moves in that direction. There's the High Plains American Indian Research Institute that they're forming and is becoming more of an entity. But I think it's really a work in progress at the University of Wyoming. I think one thing that I would like to say that they've done, that it's not so much supporting specifically tribally led research, but the University of Wyoming, after we pushed on them for a long time, agreed to pay the subawards for our research partners in advance, which they have never agreed to do for any other project. And that's really important because they are expecting these small organizations to be able to pay for a quarter's worth of people's salaries and materials and then be reimbursed. And that's just absolutely not feasible. So it was a bit of an obvious thing that still took a lot of work in doing, and I think that's allowed the partnerships to work in the way that they have.
So I'm at Montana State University, and I think the things that came to mind for me were we have several centers. So we have the Center for American Indian and Rural Health Equity, and they have some pilot funding, and they have community. I can't remember what they're called, advocates or outreach, but there are people that work with the university, but that are tribal members, and so they kind of link up researchers with communities so that it is research that is driven by the community, hopefully, and that and then helping to train the researchers at Montana State University so that they're doing research that is more tribally led, hopefully, and then and we also do have we're getting together monthly. Trying to bring all the researchers across the university so that we know what types of Indigenous research are going on and talking about CDPR and how to make research more tribally focused. Anything else?
I just wanted to say that Trina really brought McGill's situation up to date, but in the history of our organization, the idea was that our staff and our professors were there for any kind of consultation in the communities that they wished, and they just had to ask.
Thank you. So we're going to close this panel with a question to, or more of some thoughts from our community members up here. If you could just share to us why you thought participating in this research project was important and the importance of it in the community.
For one thing, we have a high risk of diabetes on our reservation. And another is that my brother-in-law, he never knew he was a diabetic. And doing the research, and he's one of the participants, and he's part of the project. And getting all those test results really opened their eyes of diabetes on the reservation, and for his family and everybody. So.
Well, I personally like to sit on boards that I have some interest or support in. And when I was asked to sit on this board, I've always been a gardener, and I always supported vegetables and fruit. And it was a way that some of the people were always saying, well, I would grow a garden, but it's so expensive, and I don't really know where to start. So with this program, I kind of looked into it to see what it was doing, and they were providing assistance almost with every level. We do what we call the garden parties, and we do where we take the little pods and they get to plant their seeds. We have seeds, every kind of seed you can think of. So they come, they eat, they plant their seeds, and we kind of keep track of each one of them. We have a personal contact with each, but each of them receive their gardens. We meet with them on where they want to locate it. A lot of them have raised beds. We provide the dirt, the soil. We provide plants. If they don't get their seeds to grow in time, we can go to the nursery and get plants. So we provide every information they need for planting with companion plants. Some plants can't grow next to each other, so we provide that. There's support in every level. And Ethelene Potter, who is the director, she is always looking for ways to help them understand that it is not costly. We go and cut red willow for steaks for the beans, or she just looks at different ways to help them understand that we can grow. She supports them to even grow in pots on their porch, or, just different ways that, and even the kids are like, showing an interest in, well, I want to grow this, I want to grow that. We had a table at the health fair. We gave out seeds instead of candy. And everybody we ran out of seeds. Everybody wanted seeds. So the interest is there. We just want, to help everybody get started.
What I like about it is we're trying to get our kids away from this fast food stuff. And if we can get the families all growing their own garden, and it would gradually go back to kind of the way it was in the beginning. We kind of hope, me and Clarice kind of hope, we have 3 young boys that we're raising, and we keep them. Well, we don't keep them, but they know what to eat, and which is healthy, and I know there's a lot of kids out there that can learn the same thing, but we've got to get our people to start getting into gardening again, what they used to do a long time ago, and start feeding their kids and themselves healthier foods. I know she gets on my back because I'm a diabetic too, and if I didn't listen to her, I wouldn't be here, but it's we just gotta turn those people's minds around to where they're going for the good instead of the fast food joints.
Well, I want to thank our panelists and close with just a word about how together we are reclaiming the Indigenous value system of research. We always, as a people, gathered data. We looked at everything that was around us. We gathered it, we analyzed it, and we used it for the health and well-being of our people. And what we are seeing is this reclaiming of this Indigenous value system of doing research for only one reason. And that's what differs between what we do and you all just expressed here today is why do we do it? We don't do it just because we're curious about a question. We don't do it because we want to get published in a paper. We do it for the reasons you talked about for your brother, so that she can nag you into doing what's right over there for your diabetes. We do it because we love our people. And that's what Indigenous research is. And so thank you all for doing that work. And I appreciate you being part of this panel. So thank you. So a round of applause for our incredible panelists.